Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our readers and listeners of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position and with your favorite beverage to enjoy the discussion. Before we get into the discussion today, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience at SmithWeekly, including Joe S., Paul M., Chris T., Mike G., at Uranium Insider, Peter B., John Q., at Eric101, and at Feeds Explorers. So today we are talking with James Sykes, Vice President, Exploration and Development of Appia Energy, a uranium and rare earths explorer focused in Canada and the Athabasca Basin. The company is listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange under symbol API and also on the U.S. OTC markets under the symbol APAAF. James, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, James, give us your background. Kind of give us an overview first of your background, and then I want to kind of proceed in sequence leading up to where you are with Appia today. So go ahead and just give us your background, and then we'll kind of move up the timeline.
For sure. So basically, I'm a geologist by trade. I've been up in the Athabasca Basin for the past 12 years, which is in northern Saskatchewan. Prior to that, I lived in Elliott Lake born and raised and grew up there. My dad was a miner at the uranium mines in Elliott Lake. So I kind of have uranium running through my blood, quite literally. And so when I moved out to Saskatchewan, I had a job with Denison Mines, and we, part of the exploration team that led to the discovery of Phoenix and also Griffin. We prioritized those targets, and then, those discoveries were made after I left. Then I kind of moved on to Forum Uranium to go learn from one of the best geologists, uranium geologists in the world, Ken Wheatley. And so working with them, we're having a good time. But then obviously it was 2008, and so the world crashed, and they got me onto Hathor Exploration, which luckily had made a discovery that year. And so working with Hathor, I was just doing a lot of core logging, which I was used to, and came up with a geological model that ended up predicting where the flow of the geological controls, the structures, and predicted where the next zones would be, which did pan out. Hathor got bought out by Rio, so I jumped over to Rio, did a couple of years there, and felt that I just wasn't growing at the pace that I needed to, so found NextGen, decided to go there, and I liked the properties that they had, which was part of the decision to go there. And obviously we made the Arrow discovery there. So that was a nice big find. And then following up on Arrow and NextGen, eventually led my way into Appia, which I've been here for the last couple of years now, since 2016, almost 3 years.
So I want to talk a little bit about NextGen before we get into Appia. So kind of before we get to NextGen, actually, kind of what things worked out well for you during your experiences with these other companies, and kind of what did you find is maybe some failures and maybe things that fell apart throughout your experience?
It's a good question. So what worked really well was just, again, because I was a young geologist at the time, I had the ability to learn from people who, experienced and seasoned geologists, and not specifically just on the uranium side, but, I worked with a lot of gold guys who came over to the uranium side, and they brought some of their own flavors to exploration. So I had a lot of good mentors, I'd like to say, some of whom, actually Irv Ainsley, who's on the board of directors with Appia, well, not the board, but he's advisory to the board. And he was one of my first mentors, and the guy's brilliant. So being fortunate enough to learn from a guy like that was great. What didn't work so well, I honestly can't say, because a lot of these companies, it was always good times there. I just kind of like to grow and learn, and so if I felt like I wasn't moving forward at the pace that I kind of wanted to do, then I would just find something else and find somewhere else with new people that I could learn from. So it was always a learning curve, always trying to better myself.
So, next gen, what people in your view were instrumental in bringing that deposit to where it is today? There have been some folks that have departed the company, including yourself, since discovery. What was your role there, and where do you see the folks, in your view, what are the folks that were instrumental in bringing that discovery to where it is today?
So my main role there, I was the head geologist. I was the chief geologist, and so I, came up with targets. I also brought on the exploration crew. I hired all those guys. So basically, there were three main people really involved in that discovery, and that was myself, Matt Schwab, and then our VP, Andrew Brown. We were the guys who were up in the field. We were the technical guys. We came up with the targets to drill. We prioritized them, which the one that was Arrow was our main target. We always wanted to get there since day one. And so, that's, I would say those three people were the main credits to the discovery at Arrow.
And so there's another gentleman, Garrett Ainsworth, that used to be at NextGen as well, and he's since left to go do some other things. I see he's trying to get something going with Standard Uranium and also a pool co, MK2 Ventures. What was Garrett's role at NextGen?
Garrett came on after the discovery, even after I guess he came on that second summer. So we had made the discovery, but when he came on, he basically replaced Andrew, who was our VP. So Garrett then became the vice president of exploration. Okay.
And the type of discovery, NextGen gets a lot of credit for the type of discovery, real, deep down, a place that folks really never thought was really possible because of all the other historical discoveries in the area, the popularity surrounding the other discoveries. Who was kind of the guy who thought about the concept of doing, finding the discovery that NextGen has?
Well, in the concept type of category, this is where I got to bring Forum into this, because if you look at where Forum Uranium was exploring between 2006 and 2008, they were outside of the basin. Their model was looking for these routes to these unconformity deposits. And if you do some more work, you'll notice that most of the deposits out there, they're more basement-hosted deposits than there are unconformity hosted. So it's just been a misnomer of the exploration or the geological model that we see in the Athabasca. Everyone calls them unconformity hosted uranium deposits. It's not technically correct. If there's a good technical term to use for them, they're actually structurally controlled uranium deposits. And so where do all the structures really emanate from? They emanate from the basement. These are the main structures that control everything. So that's, working with Forum, I learned all this, being at Hathor. Hathor, again, that was another basement-hosted deposit. It was close to the unconformity, but it wouldn't be a classical unconformity. It was controlled by this major structure coming through there and some cross structures. So seeing that and learning there, I had these models come into play into NextGen. So our target there, wasn't typically just looking for the classic unconformity style. We were looking for a uranium deposit, knowing that the structures played an integral part. That's what we used our geophysics to find. Our geophysics was looking for the basement-hosted structures, and that's what we used to target. Okay.
So moving on a little bit, at what point did you end up teaming up with Tom Drivas?
Back in 2016. So I got in touch with Tom pretty early on in the year, and we just kept some dialogue going back and forth. So between NextGen and Appia, I didn't have much going for myself. I was taking some time off. I've got a young family, so I decided to spend time with my family and just help out around the house. And I've had these properties in mind for quite some time, even that kind of go back to Hathor days. And so I felt it was time to really get back into the swing of exploration. I brought these properties to Tom, and he really liked what I could bring to the company. He liked the properties that I was proposing, and so again, we just kept this dialogue going, and eventually we started working together.
So now moving on to Appia, and we'll get to the projects in a moment, but give us a snapshot of the company in terms of the management team, the compensation of management, the share structure, and who are the major shareholders?
All right, so basically management, there are, Tom Drivas, he's the founder, CEO, and president. He formed Appia back in about 2006 when uranium prices were getting hot. He had staked a large property in the Elliott Lake historic jurisdiction. So Elliott Lake at one point was the uranium capital of the world. It's my hometown, so I'm quite familiar with it, which was one of the reasons why I kind of focused on Appia, because anybody who would go back into my hometown, I had a lot of respect for. So Tom went in there again, staked the property. They did some work between 2008 to 2013. Now have inferred and indicated resource of 55 million pounds U3O8, 180 million pounds total rare earths. So quite a sizable size. Historic on the property, has at least 200 million pounds uranium, non-43-101 compliant. So yeah, Tom had that property staked. The other members of of our corporate team, there's Frank Vanderwater. He's our CFO, also the secretary, and then myself, who's the VP. On the board of directors side, we've got some very experienced people in there. Thomas Skimming, who's had a wonderful career in gold exploration. Doug Underhill, who's also had a very long career in uranium and also in rare earth on the commercial side of things, as well as working with the IAEA. Brian Robertson, again, who's had a long career in the industry. He's now the president of Mexican Gold Corp, which has a quite significant find on their hand. Nick Bontis and Bill Johnson, who's our lawyer.
Okay. And what's your view to compensation? You guys are, early stage explorers. There's not a lot of capital around in the sector yet. What's your approach to compensation, and what do you have set up there now?
A little bit of both, yeah. We're all paid. The three main core members of Appia, Frank, Tom, and myself, we're all paid on a per diem basis. Tom, I think, has actually been rolling back some of his expenses just to get the company going. Tom really firmly believes in this company. We all have options, so we've all got that stake. Tom Drivas and his party basically own more than 50% of the outstanding shares. So again, Tom is very heavily into this company. He's a firm believer in both the uranium side of things and the rare earth. He really likes what Appia is doing, and so he's got a lot of skin in this game. As for your other question about how many shares we actually have outstanding, we're still closing the financing. So, we should be closing that next week on the 15th. So we'll have a little bit updated then. But as of now, we have over 60 million shares outstanding.
Okay. So moving on to another question. A number of investors are interested in Appia. They're looking for some better exchange options, as some are having difficulties with the Canadian Securities Exchange getting access. With the company progressing at this point, are there any near-term plans to get listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange and perhaps upgrade OTC listing to a QX status?
We just recently actually got onto the QB status for the OTC. That was last year in January. Right now, we're still trying to focus beyond the exploration side of things, and we're hoping that with some of the properties that we have, especially with Alsa's Lake, where that's shaping up to start looking like it's going to be a bona fide world-class deposit. Once we start getting those moving forward, then we'll have a much better look at going on to the venture or to the QX. But right now, just because we're simple exploration, it's just more of a strategic and even economic. It just makes sense for us to stay on these lower tier markets.
Right. Yeah, and I know the CSE is certainly a little bit more cost effective than the TSXV.
So much more.
So it's I can see why you guys are hanging out there, and so it'll be interesting to see how you guys kind of advance that, and of course even beyond that in the future, kind of as sentiment improves in the sector and the company continues to progress. The more recent high grade discoveries in the Athabasca Basin have been kind of in the southwest. Do you see the northeast as kind of being a better place to be working at this point? And between the two regions, which one do you like better?
I actually like the whole basin as an entire entity itself. I don't think there's one area better than the other. I still think when you look at where most of the exploration and discoveries have been made on the east side of the basin, I still see a lot of open ground there. You look at what's been discovered in there since 2000 even, like less than 20 years, and there's been a number of major high-grade discoveries that just were never thought of 5 or 10 years earlier. So there's a lot of under-exploration and underexplored areas. Myself, I still think the central part of the basin, although it's much deeper, I think there's a lot of potential out there. We had actually staked a property. That was one of the properties I brought forth to Tom, was what we had called the other side property. A lot of the geophysics there kind of mimicked what I was looking at with Arrow. I thought it had great legs to actually make a discovery. Unfortunately, again, it is deep, and you'd have to drill quite a ways to get to the basement rocks. But that whole central part of the basin is completely underexplored. Even the north end of the basin's underexplored, and there's quite a ways to work.
Do you think the east side has kind of more infrastructure at this point, given the developments and the mines already in place there?
So, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of figured the same thing, just kind of taking a look at it and considering the locations. So along the lines of the other question there, is the Athabasca Basin region your favorite jurisdiction for uranium, and do you believe other jurisdictions compete in other ways in the context of timing, less red tape, and speed to market?
Yeah, again, every jurisdiction has their own pros and cons. I do love the Athabasca, and I think it is the primary area, but I believe that grade is king. I'm one of those type of people. Before I actually went on to starting my career in uranium, I've worked as a summer student over at Red Lake, so I got to see some of their high grade gold, and so I seem to have been around high grade commodities for quite some time and throughout my whole career. But seeing that gold there at Red Lake really put a lot of things into perspective for me. Like their average grade in that high grade zone is 2 ounces per ton. Whereas you look at the average grade of gold, it's 1 gram per ton. So these guys are mining. Their margins were a lot lower than what you'd do for a 1 gram per ton operation. So very early on in my career, I kind of saw that as being, that's the way to get a mine going. You need something that's high grade, something that can move forward rather quickly. And the Athabasca, again, that's world class uranium grades. Nothing else compares to it. But I do like some of the other areas, yes. I like the African projects. I like some of the African areas. They aren't as high grade, although some of them are pretty feasible. But there's a lot at surface, but they also have, some of these areas have some jurisdictions or some governments that really work well with them. And so they have a lot of things going for them. I'm also a fan of the American operations, especially with those the uranium vanadium plays in the sandstone. I think those are some nice deposits as well. And with some of the technologies that have come out or recent advancements, such as ablation, it's definitely a good way to go about extracting uranium and vanadium from the ores, and it's much more cost effective in that regard.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your comments on the other jurisdictions and so forth. And so speaking to Appia's uranium properties, when are you planning to progress new work on some of the uranium properties, and can folks expect news on these properties in 2019? Where is the focus going to be in terms of project priority?
In 2019, well, like I mentioned earlier, we are just currently trying to close on a raise. And so with the funds that we raise from that, we will be looking at, spreading over some of our properties on the uranium side of things, but also back onto Alces Lake. On the uranium side of things, we will be, we're in the planning stages of it right now to go and do a drill program over at Loringer, which is, I guess, one of our main uranium targets. We drilled back there in 2017, and we had 6 out of 7 drill holes hit. It's very encouraging. We've got a number of targets that we'd like to go chase and see what's down there. Again, geophysical targets that really mimic other high-grade discoveries. So, we think we've got some very exciting targets that do need testing with a drill hole. So we will be planning on that, and hopefully we'll get to that, let's say February, March type area. There's also another project, North Wollaston project, that we have that we'd like to advance through some modern recent airborne geophysics. So there are boulders and outcrops at surface there that do have high-grade uranium, and so a nice radiometric survey would help with that, but also EM and magnetics to put a little bit more of the basement geology into context would greatly advance that project. So we'll be looking at that as well. The remainder of the focus, and the big part of the focus for the summer, will be back onto Alsa's Lake, which is our high-grade rare earth project. Again, we've got a number of showings at surface. We've got the potential for more showings both at surface and below the surface. So we really want to get that project into a much more advanced stage. And so we'll be spending a lot of time focusing on drill efforts for that project, trying to get to a resource stage calculation, maybe even a PFS PEA type of document as well.
Okay, so I want to pick on the uranium stuff for just a little bit longer before we go on to Alsa's Lake. So do you see the potential for Laranger or Wollaston to possess a near-surface high-grade discovery? What do you see as the most likely deposit characteristics there?
Oh, absolutely. I believe there's a good potential for a uranium deposit there. It wouldn't be there otherwise. It's, again, I have a very simplistic approach to exploring for uranium, and a lot of that is based on just geological models, but also backed up with the geophysics. And so, what I see on Loringer, that's I see a number of targets there that do mimic what I saw at Hathor, what we used to discover Arrow, what I've seen at other deposits. So I firmly believe that the right conditions do exist there, and we could be sitting at a nice uranium deposit there. Again, we'll never know until we drill it, but that's the sad thing about exploration. There's never a 100% answer until you actually drill. But we've done enough work to justify for going there and actually to drill it. And with North Wollaston, again, this is an area that I've had on my eyes since 2008. It's on trend with the Eagle River system. If you look at the regional geophysics, it's on this nice elongated gravity signal, which you follow that, and there's a number of deposits on that same feature. So I think this is another type of area which you have to start looking at the structural plays. You have to start looking at the structural controls that host these deposits. And from what I'm seeing in the geophysics, based on the historic geophysics and regional, I see a lot of these potentials that exist. So we just need to follow up with some more recent geophysics, especially with gravity survey, and we'll have a much better idea of the potential there. But as it stands now, the potential is very high for having a deposit there.
So I want to move on to Elliott Lake. So give us your thoughts on Elliott Lake in general, which I think I already have a good idea what those are. But at what uranium prices do you see Elliott Lake as becoming a focus, on an economical standpoint, and certainly a focus for Appia? When do you plan on doing some work there, and when might a PEA be in the works there, and bringing some of the historic resources back into present?
Yeah, with Elliott Lake, again, I do think Elliott Lake is a great jurisdiction. It used to be uranium capital of the world. So, before the Athabasca really got going, Elliott Lake actually supplied a lot of the uranium for Canada Power and exports. There's still quite a number of pounds in the ground there. I honestly can't say how much there is, but I can guess that there's enough to make it, again, one of the largest uranium jurisdictions in the world. For prices, if somebody goes and reads our 43-101 that was done in 2013, you'll see that the prices that they used to come up with a resource, they used $70 a pound of U3O8 and 76 pounds a kilo of rare earth elements. So again, these are kind of the prices that we would be looking at. that would have to be sustained for Elliott Lake to go forward. And to get it going, though, again, would monitor the uranium side of things and see how that market actually starts progressing, especially with what's just happened recently with the shutdowns. But the uranium market does have to come back. At to what price, I don't think anybody can give an honest answer. But right now, with the work that was done in 2011, 2013, that was enough to keep that property in good standing for quite a while. So it's still in good standing for at least another 5 years. So we're not in any big rush to get that project.
And it's it's in a spot there that there's lots of infrastructure already in place, and it's kind of an optionality type situation. And of course, when you guys did those the studies on that, of course the uranium price was much higher at that time. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, of course, with the market and sentiment going forward. But it is a nice kind of a back card in your in the back pocket there. So Jim, we get the production question often, and we have readers always asking about this, an audience. If there was an economic asset in the Appia group of assets in a rising price, uranium price environment, if there was some kind of a PEA and a PFS and a decision to maybe go towards a development, do you see an operation commencing, say, 2025? Can you kind of give, just for the audience, maybe a rough time frame realistically to bring an asset in?
Completely hypothetical. Again, Elliott Lake does depend on the price. So if the prices, if we saw the prices continuously rise and stay stable above $70 a pound, then yes, we would look at moving Elliott Lake, because the infrastructure is already there. We've got a good understanding of the Teasdale zone already. Elliott Lake geology is actually very simplistic, and Teasdale zone is shallow enough to actually put in a shaft. We're looking at about 250 meters to put one in. So again, it's not very deep operation. So something like that would be able to go forward. I'm not too familiar with the whole permitting side of things, so I don't know what would be involved in that, and I don't know how long some of those would actually take. But if we focus on the Athabasca, again, we're looking at somewhat of a different scenario there. We're looking at making a discovery that's near surface, something that we can open pit. And because of where we are, we're close to the infrastructure that is in place there. So we have mills already there. Even the Rabbit Lake Mill, which is currently on hiatus, Cameco just has it in care and maintenance. Something like that, we would be looking at perhaps toll milling out of there. So in that regard, if we can make a discovery on Loranger or North Wollaston prior to 2025, the permitting side of that should be rather simplistic, because it's just a mining operation, and toll mill it through the Cameco mill, or even the Orano mill, McLean Lake. Those are some of the possibilities that we would investigate. And again, they already have their permits in. They've got all the jurisdictional boxes checked, and everything's good to go for them. So again, that's something like that. It's just a straight up mining operation. So to get going by 2025, if we can make a discovery this year, I see that as actually being a possibility.
Okay, and how confident are you working some kind of a milling arrangement with either a Cameco or Orano?
I would see that as actually being pretty confident. I personally, I think I could. I wouldn't see any of them balk on it, especially the Cameco mill. I think that would actually be a good operation and a good cooperative agreement for both companies.
Okay, so tell us. Let's move on to Alcis Lake. Tell us about the rare earth opportunity there. What is the status of sampling, permitting, and a logistics plan for processing samples there? How is the access, and is there something economical at this point? And if so, what are the scenarios being considered?
So with Alcis Lake, again, we're still very early stage. I would even still call us a grassroots exploration stage. We know we've got at least 7 zones, high grade zones at or near surface, and these zones host grades that are world class, and they're rich in the critical rare earths, especially neodymium, praseodymium, and dysprosium, which are used in permanent magnets. So we know we've got value there already. It's just a matter of how much size, and that's where some of this work we're looking at doing this summer comes into play. The permitting stages side of things, we are, we're permitted to do the work. It's, again, exploration. We're not pulling anything out of the ground yet, so we're still considered that. On the sampling side of things, again, it's just a matter of doing some additional exploration. We do have some samples that we will be sending into the SRC lab for some preliminary metallurgy work. So we're going to look at starting off with a tabling study to see how they can handle the ore that we potentially have up there. All of the ore is basically the same up there. It's rather unique. It's almost simplistic in a way, which is great. So to get that project, we just need to do some additional more work done on it, just to see how much we actually have there. Unfortunately, we've only just focused on a little area, but there was so much there that it kept us busy for quite some time. There are quite a number of other showings in just around that area in itself, but also with the potential for finding more of these zones beneath the surface. We've identified that we have a lot of work to get done, and a lot of that is going to be drilling. So we need to start focusing on that. We need to actually find out how much we have there to really get the ball rolling on that. Even right now, we could just go up there with pickaxe and shovels and just start taking away some of the samples and shipping them down to SRC. And because they're so high grade, there's the potential margin off those is actually quite high. That we could do a quick little standalone operation and have some sort of revenue come in.
Well, it's interesting information. Looking out a little bit further, kind of big picture, how do you like the rare earth market at this point? What's your thoughts? Is it pretty stable going forward? Give us kind of your thoughts on rare earths at this point and forward demand and how you feel about pricing.
Yeah, I see the pricing. I see everything continuously growing. I don't see this. I don't see the rare earth side of things really slipping away. It's the main driver with today's rare earths are electric vehicles and wind turbines, so green energy applications. And that's, the whole world's even going this way. China has recently, they've kind of mandated that their car manufacturers need to start producing more electric vehicles, and they're going to actually stop some companies from producing gas and diesel vehicles. So they're really pushing this whole electrical thing. They've committed to having clean air, and so they're really pushing forward for it. The rare earth industry in itself, again, right now is being pushed by the permanent magnet stage. If you look at it through time, though, it's kind of jumps from element to element. I don't see the permanent magnet thing going away anytime soon. I don't even see it going away in a long term. I think this is a market that will continuously grow. I don't see any reason for it not to grow. Will it be exponential? I'm not an economist, and I can't really say that. I can just kind of see what I see happening now, and it looks like everything is going to continuously grow. There are rumors, there are numbers coming out showing that China is now importing more rare earths than, they're starting to import rare earths because their own demand can't even meet with their own internal supply. So again, you're looking at that type of situation where if they continue on that trend, then you will need to get more of these global deposits up and running. And so this is where we see Alsa's Lake being something that can fit into this global picture. More specifically, we'd like to see something happen in North America, because right now the big thing that China really dominates on is the final manufacturing. So what happens with all the rare earths afterwards, after they're mined, after they're processed and turned into oxides or metals? China holds the monopoly on that end. And this is where North America, this is where Europe really has to get their acts together and start taking some of that off, or start doing some of that work internally. And that's what we would like to see happen in North America, so that we could be a direct supplier from the mine site to the end product stage, all within North America. We think that that has we just think that actually has more of a long-term strategy that could potentially work.
Okay, and give us for the audience who doesn't really know much about it, how does the contracting work with rare earths? Is it kind of mark to market, or is it longer term supply agreements, or how does that work?
A little bit of both. I kind of read the Chinese news daily about rare earths, and it seems like they're on a spot market almost. Suppliers will wait until they can get a better price for their commodity. End users will also wait until they can get a better price. So there's a little bit of that. As far as long term, I actually don't know too much about the market in that regard to know if there are long term supplies. I could imagine that there are. Tesla signed a 3-year deal with a Chinese company to be supplied with permanent magnets. Linus Corp and Brown's Range, they've got their own offtake supplies to feed China as well and feed Japan. So those are a little bit more long-term agreements as well. Again, it seems to be a mixture of both, I guess, long-term and on the spot.
Right. So we all know that Appia has both uranium and rare earth prospects. Do you see the uranium potential in the current environment for uranium as kind of the bigger piece for Appia at this point, or do you see both of these opportunities as kind of a 50-50?
We see them as a 50-50 for sure. It's, we see uranium coming back. So that's why we're going to focus on some of our uranium properties. Last couple of years, it was just so depressed. I've told people this story. When I first joined Appia, uranium was actually, it was coming down, but it was still doing better than it was back in 2017 and 2018. And so we'd go out and raise money, and nobody wanted to hear the rare earth side of the story. Everyone just wanted to hear the uranium story. Shift focus to 2017, nobody wanted to hear the uranium side of the story. They all wanted to hear the rare earth side of the story. So it's kind of it's a nice mixture of both, and we're happy that we're focused on both. We're firm believers in both the rare earth and the uranium markets. Uranium, personally, I think uranium is the energy source of the future. I don't think we should shy away from it at all. It's a great energy source. It's efficient. It's green. It's a wonderful source of energy. There's no doubt.
No, I agree, and I think people will start warming up to that fact, and there's no doubt that there's a good situation going forward, and looking outside of the U.S. and looking at other countries and the rollout of nuclear construction projects, and the supply-demand fundamentals, and the fact that it is a very clean form of energy, very robust, very base load, obviously, and quite honestly, probably, everybody seems to forget it's very safe as well, and I think it trumps even, how many people fall off roofs installing solar panels or these wind turbine accidents, and then let's not even talk about the space usage and the fact that they're not 24/7 base load power either. So there's a lot of things that are looking quite good, and certainly the supply demand picture is probably the biggest key for the audience, and most people really like that. But with that, we also get the upside of participating in an industry that is going to provide really good power going forward. So I think it's a great opportunity. So on the uranium side, is there any businesses outside of Appia that you like that are in the uranium space at this point?
Well, obviously, I think Appia is number one. There's no doubt about that. I think we've got the best. I think we have the best properties to actually make a discovery with Elliott Lake. If the price ever does come up, like I said, it's it's a back pocket play. Appia is certainly my favorite company for sure. But if I had to go out and pick some others, I do like Energy Fuels. They do have that uranium vanadium, that co-play, and just recently they announced that they were starting to process some of their vanadium. So I think they've got some great assets. I also really like Plateau Uranium out in Peru. I think that property has, it has the right makings, the right jurisdiction to actually start moving forward as well. And again, even some of these African deposits, they look like they have the makings of being able to move forward. But in the end of it all, what really matters to me is the grade, and you're just not going to find that anywhere else except for in the Athabasca Basin. So if you can picture something like an arrow being right at surface, that's a huge moneymaker.
Yeah, absolutely, and certainly with a team that can bring it out of the ground and go through all the steps, from contracting to the geology, like where you're at, and all of the parts and pieces to make the machine work. So on that subject, Jim, what do you say to investors who see where uranium is going, but maybe find the developers or the producers in a better position to capitalize in the short term? Why should they look at explorers like Appia?
Because explorers are historically where most of the money has been made. As soon as someone can make a discovery, again, that's what is it? The Lassonde curve. If you look at the Lassonde curve of from exploration to production, a junior has relatively low share value. So again, you can probably get more shares for your dollar in that sense with a discovery. Then your share prices just spike through the roof. So there's that incentive. It is a little bit riskier because nobody knows if you're going to actually make a discovery, but the potential payoff is much better than being with a producer. Yes, on the short term, to play it safe, producer is obviously the way to go, and that's with any commodity, that's typically the situation. So it's not wrong for people to want to do that as well. But for those who have no adverse side effects to being a little bit riskier and to playing a little bit more of the market, again, that's junior exploration is the way to really make some high returns.
Yeah, I agree. And if you can put together the right sequence, just get the timing right just a little bit, and come to a discovery in a rising uranium price or rare earth price environment to where sentiment is improving, et cetera, I think that you can really do well. And I think on the other side of that, I think a good recent example would be NextGen. NextGen was they did a discovery in a more or less a bear market for uranium, and I think that as a result, their share price is you weren't able to experience that full upside in a discovery type environment that you would otherwise experience in a rising bull market. And so I think it got cut short a little bit, and that's too bad. But you can't always get the timing right. But certainly right now that the fundamentals are lining up for these explorers, especially the good ones, that can really enjoy an impressive move higher. So I appreciate you clarifying that for the folks who maybe have not considered that. So why should investors be taking a stake in Appia today? What would you say to the potential investors about the Appia proposition?
For Appia, again, we have the upside potential for making a uranium discovery. That in itself would warrant a price peak in our share price. So there's potential money to be made in that. We also, because we're an explorer in uranium, it's kind of funny if the price of uranium goes up, most of the people who are in that commodity also go up. This happened back in 2008. It's happened. I've noticed it since I've started in the business here. The companies follow the spot price. If it goes up, it goes up. If it goes down, they all go down. So there's the potential for that. If everyone believes that the uranium spot price will continue to go up, as I do believe, then the explorers will also go up in that regards, and therefore Appia will go up in that. The discovery, Elliott Lake, if the uranium spot price keeps rising to even to $40, then Elliott Lake now starts to look much more attractive. And again, that's our back pocket play. It has the potential to move forward at one day. So there's that. But then we've also got Alces Lake. So it's not just the uranium side of things, but on the rare earth side of things, we could actually move Alces Lake into a small little production company relatively easily. And so there's that potential for not just having a world-class deposit, a rare earth deposit, but also starting to be a rare earth producer on the global scale. So, bringing in some sort of income for the company, I'm pretty sure will go a long way. So Appia has a lot of upside potentials, and that's where, we see a lot of value for any shareholder getting into the company, especially at this early stage.
No, I appreciate the information on that, and it certainly is a good situation for potential investors to be considering. So what on the catalyst side for uranium price, what do you see in the near term as maybe some catalysts that we need to kind of experience and pass through in order for the uranium price to continue its upward momentum? What global events are you looking at this point going forward that will help to get this off the ground?
I think a lot of it has already been put in play, especially with Cameco and the Kazakhs really cutting their production. I think that was probably the major catalyst that could have happened to start turning around this industry. With the commodities there, if they start signing long-term contracts again, that will breathe more life into the uranium space, and so those contracts need to start being filled out. And from what I've read, we're getting to that stage where this has to happen. So there's again, and still with the builds in China that are planned, with those continuing, and even in more developing countries, again, they're all planning for nuclear builds. So there are a lot of catalysts that should be happening. So again, it's always just a matter of time.
Yeah, I think so. I think getting this 232 off the desk is important, so we can move on to the kind of the main event, so to speak, of the long-term contracting. I think that's key, and obviously the construction and the commissioning and the restarting of plants worldwide, whether you're talking Japan or you're talking about China, new builds or other projects going on throughout the world. Those are steadily coming online, and I think 2019 certainly has an estimate of at least 10 plus reactors coming on, whether they're a mix of restarts or new build commissions.
Yep.
So there's certainly a number of things that are moving the ball forward. So, James, how can investors reach out to the company for more information?
They can call the company directly. They can talk to Frank or Tom at the company office. They're based out of Toronto. Myself, I'm based in Saskatoon. If you actually look at the news releases, my phone number is on there, as is the company's, and our emails are all on there. So I'm accessible at any time. I can always be reached. And so if somebody just wants to give a call or send an email, which is more preferable, we'll always be happy to answer. If somebody wants to send an email directly to the Appia company, it's appia at appiaenergy.ca.
Okay, and the website?
www.appiaenergy.ca. It was just something else that was playing around in my mind here. As far as where the uranium market can go, this is a personal opinion of mine, but I really do think that small modular reactors have a place in the future market, and I think that will actually really help grow just the whole uranium downstream processing and just and end user capabilities and more applications for uranium. So I think what the uranium industry needs is for everything that we talked about to come online, but I think we also need just some sort of little new innovation to bring out more application. That's where I think these SMRs have their place in the future.
Yes, I agree, and we had a discussion with NuScale Power, which is out of Oregon-based company that seems to be, at least in the NRC world, has the most advanced application process for SMRs in the United States. And of course, if you can get the NRC stamp of approval, you can pretty much walk to any other country and get stuff moving quite quickly. And so I agree with you 100%. The SMR space is quite impressive. The capital and the backers in that space is only increasing. And it's quite impressive, the safety improvements, already an impeccable safety record that already exists in the industry, in my view. But even better, making it even more foolproof quite impressive. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think in these advanced nations that, maybe like the U.S. or even a Canada, who maybe not building a ton of new conventional reactors, I think SMRs will be the new conventional reactor going forward. So yeah, absolutely. I appreciate your comments on that. Well, Jim, thanks for coming on, and thanks for telling us about Appia, and good luck.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I hope we get to do another commentary later on.